Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we will be continuing our discussion of the Spider-Woman tie-ins to the Spider-Verse as we take a look at Spider-Woman Volume 5, Number 3. Now, last time on Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew, aka the titular Spider-Woman, was sent on a recon mission to Loomworld in order to gather intel for the Spider Army. And, coincidence of all coincidences, Jessica's counterpart on Loomworld was actually in a perfect position for Jessica to gather that intel, as she was kind of a local celebrity with the people of Loomworld, and she was a servant at the Inheritor's Great Hall. So it allowed Jessica to essentially kind of slip in and take her spot. Unfortunately for Jessica, her counterpart was kind of a bitch, and sadly wound up mistreating and taking advantage of a lot of the people of Loomworld. As such, to try and maintain her cover and ultimately kind of get at least some pent up aggression, Jessica wound up punching out her counterpart, and to keep her from going places that she doesn't want her to go, she wound up throwing her into a chest and gave her to a group of pirates. Having her get sent out to the docks while Jessica slipped into her counterpart's place. And while this did seem like a good plan, sadly a wrench kind of got thrown into everything, as when Jessica arrived back at the Great Hall, she soon discovered what her counterpart's role was in the Great Hall. She was Moreland's concubine, something that even she was kind of a little disgusted at. But in the meantime, back with Cindy Moon, she continued her trek of jumping across the multiverse to try and avoid Bricks and Bora, but sadly in one of the worlds, her teleporter wound up getting damaged, and with no other place to go, she wound up shooting a web line straight to Loomworld, where she thankfully ran into Jessica, who, to try and keep Silk from getting into harm's way, swapped teleporters with her, resulting in Jessica getting the broken one while Cindy got the functioning one, and thus Cindy made another jump into the multiverse and wound up on Earth 3145, the world that was destroyed in a thermonuclear war, which is actually where issue 3 picks up, as we see Cindy on this world and, well, trying to figure out what to do, because the Inheritors are inherently weak to radiation, this world is kind of a perfect cover for it's a perfect safe zone for the Spider Army. The only problem is it's completely irradiated. Even with the Spider Army's collective powers, they're not immune to radiation either. It'll poison them just as much as it poisons anybody else. So sadly, while this place is a good way, staying on this world is a good way to keep the Inheritors off of the Spideys, it's also not inherently safe in and of itself. As such, Cindy decides that if she's going to stay on this world, she needs to find cover, which means she needs to find the bunker. And so, sure enough, we see her in the position that we saw her during Spider-Verse, as she webs up her own little hazmat suit and goes to Sim's Tower to try and find the bunker, and as you know from the Spider-Verse storyline, she does find it and goes in. Though we don't see Uncle Ben in this story, that's for the main books to showcase, but either way, she goes in and thinks everything is all good. In the meantime, back with Jessica, we see she's kind of struggling a little, as she's trying to stay in her role as Moreland's, I guess I can, yeah. I'm just gonna say it, concubine. Even the Loomworld Jessica says that, and essentially just trying to keep Moreland happy and placated, which, yeah, is easier said than done, because while Moreland tries to put on the moves and act all suave, Jessica is just uncomfortable throughout the whole thing, especially since Moreland likes to speechify and talk about how the hunt used to excite him, but now it bores him, and he longs for when he can spare moments to be with his beloved Jess again, which is, even Jessica is just like, gag me with a spoon with this. But because of all this, she's not really touching her meal as she and Moreland are sitting down for dinner. And apparently this meal is one of Jessica's favorite, even though Jessica herself admits she's not really one for shellfish. As such, Moreland, thinking that she doesn't like the meal, he just tosses the whole table, which even freaks Jessica out. And so Moreland says, okay, fine, then we'll dance instead, which even Jessica's just like, what the hell? I'm not really much of a dancer, but even Moreland says you're one of the best dancers in a thousand worlds, which, yeah, even Jessica's like, did my counterpart just say whatever she thought this guy liked just to stay alive? And so, yeah, Moreland starts wondering what the hell's up with Jessica. After all, she's acting very uncharacteristic this day. She's not eating, she's not dancing. Hell, when he even showed up, she was bowing to him. So what's going on with her? Is she alright? To which Jessica decides to press this to her advantage and hit Moreland with a dose of her pheromone powers, and she just tells him that she had some bad shrimp and it's just not sitting right with her. She needs to go right to the bathroom right away. And thankfully, thanks to her pheromone powers, Moreland buys that hook, line, and sinker. No pun intended. And she manages to get away, though even she knows that that's a temporary solution at best. Eventually, the pheromones will wear off, and even if she was sick, that'll only last her like 10 minutes at a time. So she realizes if she wants to do something, she needs to do it now. As such, Jessica decides to start exploring the Great Hall, and after punching Loomworld Mary Jane Watson in the face because she's apparently palace security, she ends up snooping further and further into the bowels of the place, going into the vents, getting her dress ripped, and even managing to get in contact with the Spider Army through her communicator. Though because it's broken, it's coming through garbled. Which, yeah, this is also the portion that ties back into Spider-Verse. Though how the events play out in this tie-in are a little different, but overall the same things still occur as Jessica manages to find the hall where they keep the Great Web of Life and Destiny and the Master Weaver, which I'll again compliment the artwork on this, which it feels weird with Greg Land art, but I love the spread shot of the Great Web, as like when the Inheritors are sitting down for dinner in issue 9 of Amazing Spider-Man. Seeing this web spread out and in every patch you see a Spidey of a different universe all spread out, each unique, different, and varied. I thought it looks amazing and stellar, and it makes you really feel the full weight of the power the Web of Life and Destiny carries. I think that's really cool, and I dig it. But as such, it follows the same patterns that it did in Spider-Verse. Spidey remarks how much of a perfect coincidence it is that Jessica's counterpart was in such a good place for her to slip into. Jessica even remarks that Jessica even says, even agrees with that, and the Master Weaver does confirm, yep, that was me, I did that so I could get you here. And sure enough, just like in the main storyline, the Master Weaver does end up weaving together the scrolls that contain the information on the prophecy that the Inheritors are trying to stop, and likewise the information on Karn, so the Spider Army can turn him to their side. However, one difference between this book and the main Spider-Verse book is that we see Jessica as when the Master Weaver gives Jessica the scrolls, he tells her to deliver them to the Spider Army, but since her teleporter is busted, she can't teleport out, and so she decides she wants to use the Great Web, but the Master Weaver smacks her aside because, well, if someone that isn't one of the Inheritors uses the web, then the Inheritors will realize it, and they'll probably punish the Master Weaver. As such, Jessica realizes that she has to find another way out of this, but ultimately that she can't really think of anything. And so sure enough, just like in the main book, she runs back into Moreland, who wants to know where she was, and to try and make sure that he doesn't get the scroll, she teleports them to the Spider Army with her broken teleporter. With Moreland thankfully be able to stay, she's able to keep Moreland off her back enough as she talks about how she had to wash her hands from using the bathroom, which Moreland ends up just deciding, you know what, forget this. If I don't hear about your poop problem, it'll be too soon, and just leaves her. So yeah, mission accomplished. She got the intel. Everything's also well and good. And so seeing no reason to stay at the Great Hall, Jessica pretty much decides to cut and run. I mean, okay, she says that her cover was blown, but we didn't actually see it. But either way, Jessica decides that since she really has no way out off of Loomworld, her best bet is just to cut and run, hide somewhere, and wait until the war is over. And since she really has nowhere else to go, she decides to go hang out with Pirate Namor and his crew as she steals a boat and ends up taking it out to his ship. The only problem is when she gets close, the ship ends up shooting at her and blows her out of the water. When she's brought on board, she wonders what the heck's going on. But she soon learns under whose orders this actually happened. Her counterpart. Yeah, it turns out that when Loomworld Jessica was brought on board the pirate ship, she didn't just stay idle. She actually managed to essentially take control of the pirates, which, you know what? She's actually all for. She likes being pirate queen instead of being Moreland's personal concubine. It gives her power, it gives her freedom, it gives her everything she wants. So yeah, she's happy, and she even says that she should be thanking her main universe counterpart for getting her this gig. But, she's got to keep up appearances, so she's got to let her men kill her counterpart. No hard feelings. This earns Loomworld Jessica a punch in the face, and as such, she gives one final order for her crew to end up killing Jessica. But once again, this is when the main storyline comes back in, as we see Cindy Moon and Spider Gwen porting in to save Jessica's ass, and sure enough, they all group up together and get ready to face a gaggle of pirates. And from there, you know what happens next. Pirates, teleporter gets broken, Cindy captured, great climax, fight, Spidey's win. Spidey's win when Inheritors lose. So yeah, that's issue 3. Again, I know I skimmed a little bit more with this one, but again, it's some of the plot points in the book are things that I did cover in Spider-Verse. So I think I can feel safe in just kind of skimming them here. But I will say this: what I like when we see these events from the perspective of Spider-Woman, it gives us more details about them, which I'm not going to bring up continuity errors between both books as a flaw, because, well, between both books, there are some things that don't exactly match up. When we looked at the scene with Jessica finding the Great Web in the main Spider-Verse book, it was very much different, as in that one, she was just kind of hiding and taking cover, and the way it looked as though when she encountered Morlun, he was back at the Great Hall just after he kidnapped Benji, and then handed him off straight to Brix and Bora. But when we actually look at the event from the Spider-Woman perspective, well, it looks like that he just came back from that. When it comes down to issue 2, it looks like he just got back from kidnapping Benji before he met with Jessica, and from there, it resulted in him. From there, it resulted in him having his little dinner date with Jessica, her scampering off to find the Great Web, and him only looking for her because, well, she was gone so long, and so he was wondering what the heck. So there are still some errors, and even when Jessica does find the Great Web, there's some things about it that don't match up with the book, as it looks like Jessica got the scrolls but then had to cut and run before Morlun showed up. But likewise, in this one, we see her try to use the Great Web to escape and get smacked aside by the Master Weaver, which, yeah, is considered canon, as when you in Amazing Spider-Man number 14, when she and Anya and Gwen, when Cindy and Gwen are trapped on Loomworld, Gwen and Cindy do talk about how maybe they could use the Great Web to escape, but Jessica says it ends up vetoing that because of her own attempt to use it. So again, there is still like I said, there are continuity errors, but I'm gonna give the book some leeway on this, because I'm just gonna be honest here. When it comes to tie-ins, there is always going to be some continuity flubs. There's going to be events that you'd kind of wonder where they fit into a greater event storyline. It's because sometimes the stories do feel like they seamlessly flow. Other times, it feels like that the plot points that are introduced in tie-ins are just kind of wedged in there. Sometimes they match up with the storyline perfectly. Other times they don't make sense, and I feel like that there are some kind of continuity errors between Spider-Woman and the Spider-Verse storyline. Like for example, when Cindy went to go find the bunker, it seems like that she was just trying to find it on the off chance that it was there, because even she admits it might not be in this universe. Alternate realities, it might not be there, and so but we do see her find it anyway. But then likewise in the Spider-Verse storyline, when Cindy calls the Spider Army to Earth 3145, she leaves a path for them via web or arrows. Now, odds are she probably could have just left the bunker and put them out there, but I don't know, it just kind of feels weird that she would do that. I don't know. Again, she could have done that, and maybe she kind of gotten herself comfortable, taken a rest, then gone back out and thrown up the web arrows, but still, it just kind of feels weird. It just kind of feels weird, especially with how they present it. So I don't know. Maybe I'll give it some slack in that regard. But again, there are still some continuity errors between this book and the main book. The same plot points still occur. It's just that these are things you'll notice if you compare it to the original storyline. So, but again, I'm not gonna knock it against it, because I feel like it is hard when you have tie-ins for a main event, especially if the tie-ins are not, because when it comes to tie-ins, it's a different team. When you have tie-ins, it's not the same people working on the same books. Ultimately, the tie-ins have to fit into the framework of the main story, but it's not like they're given a full script there. It's not like they said, okay, here's exactly what happened. No, they're probably just going to get a general consensus about what happened in the book, and then likewise have it, and thus likewise they have to find a way to fit the story they're writing into that. So there are always going to be some minor issues in that. So again, there is continuity errors between the Spider-Woman tie-ins and the Spider-Verse storyline, but I am gonna cut it some slack. But I am gonna cut it some slack, especially since I do like how some of the details do line up a little bit better. Do line up cool. Like I'm sorry, I do like that it expands more on what happens with on Spider-Woman's side. It show because honestly, I like how Jessica's kind of doing this. Like with last issue, I do find it amusing seeing her squirming a little as she tries to think of and mostly in the excuse she does give to get more off her back, which it's just so ridiculous and funny, but I love it at the same time. But at the same time, there is still some nice, suitable tension there. Like at the end of last issue, when you had the oh shit moment when you realized Jessica had to essentially play nice with one of the big bads in order to survive on Loomworld. What makes it work, in my opinion, is the fact that, well, she does try to be smart about it. Or more specifically, I like how how it's clear that Moreland is knucking futz, because he's still an inheritor, but when Jessica interacts with him, she starts to get a better idea of why her counterpart was such a bitch. Now, this might not be the full story with her, as when she joined the Pirates, she happily was all cutthroat and ready to go crazy on her main universe counterpart when she showed up, but likewise, when you see how Moreland acts with Jessica, you can kind of see why her Loomworld counterpart would probably be the way she is, because Moreland is entitled. Like I said, he considers himself an inheritor of reality, that he's supposed to be in charge, that all bend to his whim, and likewise he acts the same way with his girlfriend. It's because considering the inconsistencies between what Moreland says Jessica likes and what Jessica actually likes, there's a good chance that Loomworld Jessica has similar tastes as her main universe counterpart, but ultimately says nothing because she doesn't want to upset the guy who can kill Spider-Man in like 5 seconds. So yeah, of course. So yeah, I can kind of understand why her counterpart would be so hesitant, but also probably be as shady. If you have to keep up this act for so long, it's gonna probably wear you down a little, make you more bitter, make you a bit more angry. Even if the people love you, in private you're gonna be like, oh god, this is a living hell. Now again, maybe there's some bits that we don't know about Loomworld Jessica that could help further explain some of her attitude, but this does explain a lot of her attitude. Just again, dealing with Moreland on a daily basis. That's kind of a problem. But likewise, like I said, it does offer a lot of suitable tension as we see Jessica have to try and adapt her way out of it, because again, this is one of the bad guys, one of the people who will eat Jessica the instant he realizes that she isn't who she says she is, and the instant that he realizes this, Jessica knows that he will do something, that he will kill her. So I do like that little bit of added tension as Jessica has to find ways to adapt around it. And admittedly, I do find it humorous how she does get around it, how she has to use her pheromone powers and feigns having a stomachache that's so bad that she has to use the restroom. It's kind of fun, it's amusing, but what I also like is that we get to see more of Jessica being a spy. Again, part of her backstory is that she was trained as a government agent by S.H.I.E.L.D., by Hydra, and apparently by S.W.O.R.D. if the Master Weaver's account is anything to go by. So I do like that we get to see a little bit more of that with her here. She's being more tactical, more secretive, more espionage, if that makes any sense. And I do like that. It's really cool, and I do like how it's reflected. But likewise, she still fits into the whole only sane person in a world full of crazy people thing, because when she encounters the Master Weaver and he goes into the whole speech about how he set all this up, even she's like, okay, cool. Like, it's clear that she sees the craziness, and there's a part of her mind that's going, am I really seeing this right now? So I do kind of like that, and I do find it amusing. But overall, I don't really know what else to say about the story. I'm trying to think, but mostly it's just once again something that ties back into the Spider-Verse storyline. A lot of the beats in the issue are things that we already covered in Spider-Verse. Jessica getting the scrolls from the web from the Master Weaver. Cindy finding the bunker on Earth 3145, thus allowing that world to become the Spider Army's new safe zone. And likewise, but what I do like is seeing the story from Jessica's perspective and seeing what she really had to go through in order to get the scrolls, having to deal with Moreland and his attempts to come on to her, having to be all stealthy and sneaky as she goes through the Inheritor's Great Hall and the tension that kind of rises from that. I like seeing her interacting with the Master Weaver and the art that comes with that, as she really does feel imposing and powerful, especially as she stands before what is supposed to be the literal foundation of the multiverse. I think that's really cool. And yet, which I do, I guess again, like I said, I love seeing how it's spread out, which, let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I'm just trying to find ways to actually spread this out because I feel like I'm flubbing this right now. Hold on, I can find it here. Apologies if it looks like crap. I'm looking at the videos, it really does look like crap, but I just look at this, seeing how it's spread out behind her, and Jessica just so tiny in comparison, and all across the multiverse she sees all these different Spider-Men just all spread out doing their own thing. It really does it does really showcase how powerful this thing really is and how Jessica is just ultimately a small piece of it. I love that. It's really damn cool, and it's amazing. I think it's amazing. But again, overall, the rest of the story really is there to. Overall, the rest of the story does exactly what it's supposed to. It showcases what Jessica was doing and brings her to Loomworld. Shows what she went through, how her getting the scrolls, and ultimately showcasing what led her to fighting the pirates, and likewise encountering Cindy and Spider-Gwen as they bring her into, as we see what happens, as we see the story kind of converge back into Spider-Verse, and we know the story from there. So there you go. If I have to list any complaints with the issue, though, this is one that's kind of bugged me a little. Again, you could probably list the continuity errors as a complaint, but again, I'll give a pass for that because odds are the writers did not just get an exact idea of what was going on between stories beyond a few general things. But I will say this. How was Jessica able to do this so perfectly? Going back to my complaint when I talked about issue 2, I mentioned how it was a really good coincidence that Jessica was able to slip in so easily into her counterpart's shoes. Because, again, Jessica's a spider totem. And we saw Loomworld Jessica walking around in what was essentially her version of the Spider-Woman costume, just without the mask. So, how does that work? Like, it makes me just wonder it just kind of makes me wonder is all. Because, again, it feels like it's too good a coincidence. Jessica arrives on Loomworld and is able to slip in. How her counterpart is wearing the exact same outfit as her. And which, I guess, is a good coincidence because, again, Jessica was in her Spider-Woman costume. Her superhero costume. A thing that should make her stick out like a sore thumb. Especially with the freaking mask. But the fact that her Loomworld counterpart was wearing a similar outfit but without the mask, I guess it's a lucky coincidence. Hand of fate, I guess. Master Weaver set it all up. But I have to ask. Let's pretend that Jessica is able to successfully slip into her counterpart's shoes. And that for the sake of argument, her counterpart was not a spider totem. Now, this is all just crazy coincidence that the Master Weaver set up just to get Jessica here. How was she able to pull this off so well? I mean, because here's the thing. As we have established in Spider-Verse, the Inheritors can sense spider totems. So, I don't know how Jessica would be able to hide that from Moreland, because she's a spider totem. She has spider powers, and he's right freaking there. Like, you can't tell me that he goes up to Jessica and doesn't immediately sense the spider essence on her, doesn't get a good whiff of it when he goes in to kiss her or when he gets close to her. Like, how does he not realize that? You could make the argument that maybe she has one of those, cloaking devices that Otto created to hide his superior spider army. But I wonder just how well one of those things works when you're standing right next to the freaking inheritor. And again, you can make the argument maybe Loomworld Jessica is a spider totem as well, which would explain why she was wearing the costume and how Jessica is able to slip in without any issues. But that still doesn't really make sense to me. I can understand the Master Weaver weaving the Loomworld Jessica's skein into a way that gets her close to the inheritors and thus allows her 616 counterpart to slip in and take her place and get the intel she needs. But that still doesn't make sense in my opinion, because when it comes down to the inheritors, the freaking instant that they realize that someone is a spider totem, they hunt them. And they know when someone's a spider totem. Going back to Edge of Spider-Verse number 4, when Patton Parnell got his spider powers and began mutating, Moreland actually told him, I sensed your creation across thousands of universes, and I just had to come here and see it. He knew when Patton became his world spider person, so he should know when when a spider totem is right there beside him. Even if Jessica had one of those cloaking devices, I doubt they would work so effectively if he's right there, because as we even showcase with Otto, those things have their limits. If you overload them, then they will fail. So I'm guessing that if an inheritor is right there, their senses aren't just gonna be dulled because, oh, this thing is here, so I guess you're not a spider totem. But no, I'm gonna call bullshit on that. I think it's a little too easy for Jessica to have slipped into her counterpart's shoes. Like, again, and whatever explanation you can think, and you can try, before you tell me, well, she could have used her pheromone powers, I'm still gonna call BS on that, because we saw more, because she said she used her pheromone powers to keep Moreland occupied so that she could sell her whole, I got stomach indigestion story. And he was more compliant when he said that. Throughout the whole other interaction, he was waxing poetic and then got upset when Jessica didn't do what he wanted. So, yeah, I'm gonna say that she wasn't using her pheromone powers until that one moment. So, I'm gonna call some BS here. It's a plot hole that, the more I think about it, really does not make sense. And I'm not gonna give it a pass for that, like with the continuity flubs between these tie-ins and the Spider-Verse storyline. I think it just does not make sense in my opinion. And I know it feels like that's a big complaint to be bringing up. It's just the more I think about it, the less I believe it. So, yeah, again, gonna consider that a flaw. Again, I could go back to the artwork, but I feel, which in certain moments it does feel dumb, but again, but then again, it also does have some, but again, that spread shot of the whole, of the Web of Love and Destiny, I'm willing to give her that. I'll give Greg Land that. You win this round, Mr. Land. I still don't like you. Stop tracing works. But stop tracing works. That's just that's beyond tacky. It's not even, I can't even use I don't even know what the proper word is, but it's not a kind one, I can say that much. But ultimately, I will say that I do still like the issue. I like how I love how it, for lack of a better term, interweaves with the Spider-Verse storyline. There are continuity errors, but I'm willing to give it pass because it's a tie-in and they don't always get it right with and tie-ins in the main events don't always get their events lined up exactly the same. And overall, I do still think the issue is fine. It has some good tension. I love how Jessica gets out of having dinner with Moreland. It's, again, just so creative and stupid but fun. And I like the shots. I like seeing this side of I like seeing this side of Spider-Verse from the Spider-Woman perspective. Overall, issue is fine. Does what it's supposed to. That does what it's supposed to. So that's really all I can say. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and, well, we still got one more issue of Spider-Woman left to look at before we move on. And while this part of the story obviously goes right back into Spider-Verse, what exactly happened with Jessica Drew when the war was over? Well, tune in Saturday to find out. But till then, hope you have a good night, and I hope you take care. Bye-bye.